Hi everyone, this is Not Your Sponsor and welcome back again to my hobby channel. I'm pretty sure that all of us have watched with desire these little parts included in some kits, that once put together they become a complete scale figure, but most of the time we don't paint them because we think it's hard to get good results. In this video I'm going to talk about figure painting, and I will show you how I painted the figure included with the T55 plastic kit, the colors I used for creating the skin tone, as well as the uniform, and the technique I used for. So stay tuned and I'll catch you after this. Well, first I think I should pronounce a disclaimer. This video does not pretend to be a tutorial about how to paint excellent minis, just showing you how I paint my figures for detailing more my models. So once that's said, let's go for it. The assembly of the figure was straightforward as shown in the kit manual. For assure an excellent holding and avoiding touching the figure, it is necessary to add a metal paint. I make a hole about 0.5 mm with my hand drill, and with a small amount of CA glue I insert it in the hole. Once dry you can handle much better the figure without worrying about damaging it. For filling some gaps, especially in the neck joint with the torso, I use some Tamiya modeling putty. In this case, acetone becomes very handy for diluting it, and I apply some passes on these areas until I see the parts to correct have been completely filled with putty. Once dry, with clean acetone, I remove the excess of putty from the non-desired areas. When dry, the putty leaves a very extremely thin grey layer on the plastic, although it won't be visible once painted. For priming the model, I use the Citadel Spray Chaos Black. I feel these type of primers are sturdy enough and also makes the priming stage quicker, because I don't like to use and later clean my airbrush for these purposes. Well, let's dive into the painting stage. I prepare my wet palette and I put the colors on it. I started mixing yellow ochre with Evils and Scarlet from Citadel. For making this color lighter, I added some white paint. And later, for the saturated tone, and making it less vibrant, I added a little bit of blue. To make the highlight tone that I will use for creating lighter shades of skin tone, I mix some yellow ochre, white and a little bit of orange. Shadow color will be created with Evils and Scarlet and blue color from Vallejo. For creating the highlight tones, I start aggregating the lightened mixture to the base skin tone, and one by one I create each tone. You can see how these colors are put in order from darker to lighter, just by adding more amount of lighting color. When the lighting tones are ready, I move to the figure. A good starting point is to use the base color diluted with a little bit of water, and I apply it on the face area. Because the color is diluted, it will reach all the recesses and details of the face without losing detail. As always, 2 layers are better than 1 thicker. With the first lighting tone, I start marking the most exposed areas. In this case, and because the figure is very small and it's covered with the helmet too, I focus on the eyebrows, the tip and main body of the nose, cheeks, lower area of the eye holes, chin and mouth. It's very important with this first application to mark clearly every highlighting area, to make sure the future work were continued properly. With the next highlights I keep painting the same areas, but this time it is very important to not to cover completely the previous layer. The effect we are building with different layers of paint consists in overlapping different paint layers, and every layer depends on the one which is below of it to get the best result as possible. Little by little I keep increasing and changing the colors towards the lighter ones. In these first steps the contrast in the face is not very evident at all, because the colors are still very similar. But you can see how I keep detailing and restricting the area when applying the color. These new brushstrokes have to be placed on the upper areas. For the final highlights, I take this time some white color and I mix it with the previous and lightest tone. It will be enough with a couple of very light tones. Right now you can see how the application of these tones is very limited. It's just about leaving the paint with the tip of the brush, and I keep my attention now on the areas around the main eye side of the face. This is the main result once all the highlighting work has been completed. Right now there is some subtle contrast on the face, but for now the overall tone of the face is very desaturated and pallid, because basically, applying the light tones we have been adding white to the main base color. So it's time to apply some shadow and warmer tones to the face. With the previous shadow tone made with red and blue colors, I start adding it to the base color. On the opposite side as with the highlighting, shadow tones have to be placed on the less exposed and hidden areas. Darker tones might seem sometimes worthless, but this work has much more importance than you might think. I start applying shadows on the lower area of the eyebrows, the inner areas of the nose, lower part of both cheeks, and the recess area of mouth and lower lip. Applying shadows is about painting in a glaze consistency. The paint layer has to be almost transparent, and because the color we're applying are darker than the main overall of the face, they still will cover enough. For finishing the shadow effect, I take the darkest color, and I only apply it on the recesses between the eyebrows and the eyes. Leaving this shadow tone in these spots will definitely change the main result of the face. As I already told, eyeside of the figure is one of the most important parts. Once completed the main shadow layers, I just push the contrast again, applying a few strategic touches with the final highlighting tone, and recovering some areas where the contrast had been lost while painting shadows. You can see how the face is almost completed right now, just by applying lighter and darker tones of the skin tone. But still there are a few missing parts that deserve to be painted. The lower lip is painted with a pink light tone. Using the main tone I used for the first highlights, I just added some more red to the color. For a last effect, I apply a few layers of black color in a glaze consistency for representing a light beard effect. By overlapping some black glazed layers, you can build a really interesting effect. Okay, so that is the final result once all the figure face is painted. Big painting work of color contrasting definitely makes a difference. Moving to the vestment, and for painting the figure uniform, I use these three colors from Vallejo. The overall color of the uniform is black, as seen in my reference photos of Berlin tanks in 1961. For applying the base color, I use directly the black-gray tone from Vallejo. Just diluting this color a bit, I apply the color on the main body, covering the whole uniform. For the first highlights of the black fabric, I add to the mix some beige red. For black clothing, it is important to not to highlight too much. If not, the figure uniform will become grey instead of black. So that's the key of using this type of colors as beige red. They will create a lighter shade of grey, but limiting the amount of white color inside the mix. For the final highlights, I add to the previous mix some sunny skin tone color. This tone is more luminous and applied only in the last coats will give extra but limited contrast to the figure. With this tone, I focus this time in the main wrinkles, avoiding the general shapes. Let's say I'm moving from general to specific areas this time. Keeping the highlights, I try to make every time smaller brushstrokes, letting the paint underneath to be seen. Working with final highlights is always a matter of applying extremely small touches on some certain parts, working always with the tip of the brush to have more precision while painting. Little by little, the illusion of a 3D pattern becomes more natural, and the painting effect gets more solid. Also, with the very last highlight tone, I outline the main edges of the uniform, applying very light colors on the edges of the little details, like pockets of the jackets and trousers makes them more defined and evident. So this is the first result of the uniform with all the light tones applied. There is not contrast enough, because I didn't apply very contrasted colors and the main work should be done with the shadowing process. On the palette, I take the Avalon black and I start mixing it with the base color. This particular figure goes inside the commander's hatch of the T-55 model. Due to this, the lowest areas won't be visible when put in place. So I start by applying some shadow tones on the legs and the areas below the blood. With this same dark tone, I keep marking the biggest recesses of the torso and arms. In the back area, all the little wrinkles should be painted in shadow color. Just check how at the same time the shadows are applied, the contrast increases. In this case, you can see how it's no matter of getting lighter tones, just balancing the overall result and creating contrasting shades. With the darkest color, apart from applying the last and deepest shadows, I also outline all the joints and recess areas. It also works like some kind of pinwash, but directly applied with more precision and made with acrylics. By outlining, all the different parts of the clothing get defined at all without extra work. Once all the shadow outlining was finished, I make some touches correcting it with the light outlining color. Applying the darkest tones really brings balance to the main color of the uniform. Although in this case there is no choice apart from black color for painting the shadows, the final result is in my opinion still natural. Also, you can check that I focus my efforts in the upper areas because they will be the parts visible at the end, and the rest of the pieces and the lower areas are less detailed. I took these two colors for representing the leather helmet. For the base layer, I mixed the Morphan brown with some Abaddon black to get a very dark brownish tone. There are plenty of possibilities when painting leather, and depending on the finish you are looking for, the colors used can vary. Because I want a low weather helmet, not very used, I'll go for a careful approach. The next highlights will be painted with more Morphan brown in the mix, and for the final highlights I will add a little bit of Japanese uniform. As said before, if you are looking for some more weather leather effect, you can use more amount of Japanese uniform color. For finishing, I applied a filter with the base color for integrating all the piece. By this time, the belt was painted with the same tones used for the helmet. For now, there are still some missing parts, but the colors and the application have been already covered in this video, so I don't want to repeat myself. In this case, hands were painted using the same mixes and techniques as the face, trying to get the same finish. So guys, this is it. The plastic figure for the T55 is completed. There has been a lot of fun painting and detailing it, at least in my case. These tiny figures demand high contrast and a clean technique to bring out all the details as possible. And they are the excellent complement for our finished model kits. You can see how all the process has turned out into the completed tank commander. You can see how each part demands different amounts of time. I have found some difficulties at the time of explaining my basic figure painting way, but I hope you find it useful and, the most important, understandable at the end. As always, if you find this type of content useful, consider to share it with your friends and subscribe to receive all the future updates. So, thanks for watching and I see you in the next one.